that's where the self-compassion and grace kind of comes in. Give yourself 8 hugs a day. It's okay. Forgive yourself, because if you were walking down the street and you saw someone with a broken arm or they were on crutches, chances are you're going to hold the door for that person. But because we can't see what we're dealing with up here, we don't give ourselves the grace.
That was Steev Hodgson, founder of Damn Healthy Dose Coaching, joining us to explore the transformative power of radical acceptance while living with ADHD. In this honest conversation, Steev opens up about his midlife diagnosis and that pivotal moment when his partner confronted him during the pandemic. She said, "Steev, we need you to figure this out." You'll get practical emotional regulation techniques like the SURF method, which helps ADHDers navigate overwhelming feelings, and hear Steev's perspective on the profound distinction between having ADHD and being ADHD. His insights on being an ADHD parent reveal how the stakes change when suddenly your executive functioning challenges affect not just you, but your children too. I'm Stephen Tonti. With me is Aaron Smith, and you're listening to Attention Different. Let's get started.
Hey, Steev, welcome to Attention Different. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. And can you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and what got you into ADHD coaching, when you were diagnosed? Just give us the overview of your story, your situation.
Hey guys, thank you so much, Stephen and Aaron. It's such a pleasure to be here on the Attention Different podcast. I'm such a big fan of your work. And so my story is kind of simple. My name is Steev Hodgson. Despite my very youthful appearance, I'm old. I got my ADHD diagnosis kind of later in life. I am now, by profession, I'm an ADHD life coach. I work with clients to, okay, it took a while for us to get here. Now we're here. What plans can we put together to, kind of manage our ADHD a little bit better? And so I'm with a company, my own company. It's called Damn Healthy Dose. And yeah, looking forward to talking more about that today.
Are you affected at all by the fires that are going on at this moment?
No. So I'm in Northern California. I'm in the Bay Area. But yeah, I mean, what they're experiencing now in Southern California, it's like unlike anything we've ever seen anywhere. I mean, they're talking about 100-mile-an-hour winds and just balls of fire. It's just really scary. And, my heart goes out to everyone down there.
Yeah. So yeah, we met at the International ADHD conference down in Anaheim. So, wow, to think, this was just in November, that we were all passing through that area, and now a lot of it's just obliterated. It's just scary. It's horrific.
Yeah, crazy times.
Mm-hmm. Our producer's asking us if there's a crossover into ADHD, and the only thing that comes to mind is the conversation I had with my partner last night. We're both in New Orleans, and dialing back to that hurricane thing, to a person, everyone I spoke to yesterday, which was hundreds, who have any relationship to the South or to hurricane land and also wildfires, said I would choose a hurricane any day or a wildfire. But Steev, would you advise, like if you had a coaching client who was like, what do I do in a DEFCON 1 scenario like that? Where does your mind go?
I had a client reach out to me just via text and ask me like, hey, my brother's kind of in the middle of this. I live 2,000 miles away. What would you suggest as far as for me to emotionally regulate with everything that's kind of going on here because of that? And that's where I think a lot of us with ADHD right now and a lot of just people in general are dealing with like the emotional regulation piece of it.
But I guess like this also brings up, kind of tie this into the ADHD stuff a little bit further, emotional regulation in a crisis situation. There's times where ADHDers can be very good at kind of being able to fire on all cylinders, and for our brains in the influx of a situation where there's a crisis, for our cortisol to kind of trip the switch of dopamine, and all of a sudden we're locked in, right? And we're that brain of ours that can filter out all sorts of stuff and taking in all of the different inputs from everywhere. It kind of like goes into this Neo Matrix mode of like sorting out what's happening, and somehow we can sometimes contextually become very good in crisis situations. But that's not everyone too, because I mean, I think for some folks, how they emotionally regulate or dysregulate in those situations can be can look all sorts of different ways, right? So what did you tell what else did you tell that client, or what else would you tell people about how to emotionally regulate?
Yeah, really good question. One of the ways is, tune out to all the outside stuff that's going on if you can. So, like turning off the CNN, turning off the updates, turning off that part of it, and maybe just get updates from the source themselves. So, in this case, it was the loved one who was somewhere right in the middle in the San Fernando Valley, and they hadn't been quite affected yet at that point from this. But like I said, this is like unknown to all of us. But that is one way. It's like, okay, let's tune out to some of this, the bigger piece of it. Don't completely tune out altogether and pretend like put your head in the sand, that sort of thing. But tune out some of the extra other voices. Maybe find one voice. And if it's not a loved one, then okay, is it this person on this newscast? Is it, don't listen to 10 different things. So that would be that was my first piece of advice to this person.
Don't overwhelm yourself with everything. Pick your sources, pick the ones that are like make the most sense, because we can get carried away with all sorts of stuff like scrolling on social feeds, and then that's going to just send us into maybe a doom spiral or something, right? Maybe not get very constructive.
Another sort of practice that I have, and I learned this through my coach training, is an acronym called SURF, which is to let the emotion, and I'd have to give Kristen Carter, who taught me this, the credit for this practice, but it's to let that emotion kind of wash over you almost like a wave, and just so instead of acting right away and doing what you're thinking you're going to do, stop for a second and regulate yourself with this like quick surf exercise, which is stop for a minute, let the emotion kind of unfold over you, and then reflect, okay, where is this in my body? Where's this emotion? For me, emotions kind of sit like right here on a piano. But as I've kind of gotten more in tune with myself, I've been able to find it in other parts of my body. For example, there's been times when I've been stressed out and I would get a cramp in my leg. And this has been happening since I was like 16. And I just thought maybe I'm not having enough potassium, whatever it is. But I recognize that like the longer and longer that I've been in touch with like my emotions and kind of understanding it, the more work you do about this, the more you do kind of getting in touch and reflecting on your emotions. But like stop, let the emotion unfold, reflect where it is, and try to find it within your body. And,
so you said, is there like an acronym for it?
Yeah. So stop what you're doing, because a lot of times that's what we'll be doing. That emotion or that feeling, it can be intoxicating. It just wants to keep us there. It's like, it's just like being at the bar at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and, you got that extra round of shots. It wants to keep you there. It wants to keep you down. So it's like, stop what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Let the emotion kind of unfold. So that's the U. Then the R is, reflect with wherever it is, and then find it within your body. Reflect on the emotion and then find it within your body. So that's the SURF acronym.
Where are you feeling that stress in your body?
Correct. And like I told you guys, a lot of times it's here. Recently I determined that this cramp that I would get would always come up when I was thinking I needed to perform, when I was putting my pressure on myself to perform at a high level. I would notice that.
So you were trained by Kristen Carter, and I heard a little bit about your background, but I wanted to see if you could kind of give the audience, let's back up, from the, let's
the
zoom
trauma
back out a little bit here. And when were you diagnosed, and what was your journey surrounding getting ADHD diagnosis and your coach training and that evolution you've had by being a dad and being someone who, had to get this ADHD diagnosis yourself? Just kind of walk us through that journey.
I joke, and you probably might have heard this before, but despite my very youthful appearance, I'm old. I'm in my 50s, and but it was late 40s. Yeah. It was my late 40s when I got my official diagnosis, and that was right around the time of the pandemic. But I can look back and know that this is something that I've been dealing with since I was a kid. I can look back to things when I was in grade school in 1986, and I can remember it boom like yesterday. And I was caught in something and was in sort of that task of trying to complete things with this ADHD brain.
What was the impetus during the pandemic times that made you seek out an ADHD diagnosis?
So I had my second daughter. She was born at the end of 2019, literally like weeks before the pandemic kind of kicked off in January, February, and March. So she was very young at that point. So that was probably it. Also, I had been one of these people that I would get a job. I would perform at a very high level. I worked in tech, in software tech for a long time, for close to 25, 30 years almost. But I would get these jobs and I would do great. And then at some point there would be like a proverbial wall that I would hit. Either I'd make a mistake or they'd get tired of me, whatever it was. Like I'd hit that thing. And I always found myself just being distracted and just not being able to turn my brain off at night. And so that was really it. I had known, I shared this on another podcast that the first time I heard about what was called ADD was in the early 90s. I remember I was coaching a swim team, and one of the students came to me and said to me, I'm dealing with this thing called attention deficit disorder. And he's explaining it to me, how he could read the local newspaper in the sports section of the local newspaper, but he couldn't do his chemistry homework. And I thought to myself, that sounds like a cop out. What are you talking about? There's no, there really is a condition like this. And so I was like,
you just thought it was normal. You just thought
that's a much better way to ask the question, Aaron, because it sounded for a second that you were in a moment, it didn't crystallize me. You know what I mean? So am I hearing you correctly that it was dismissal was it Aaron's version of dismissal where that's just everybody, or was it
correct?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I was like Aaron, exactly. Well, that's what I do. I can read the paper and who wants to do chemistry? Who's excited about it, right?
Of course, we only do what we are interested in, right?
So as the more and more that I saw this kind of coming up, I realized okay, I probably have this sort of thing. I probably have this. I would meet with therapists and they would say, yeah, you have ADD, you should look into it. I'm fine. I got it under control. And I can see how this affected relationships. I can see how this affected jobs that I would have. And it's not, this is just who I am. And once I did that, this was in 2020, I'm like, I really have to figure out how to turn my brain off. I have to do this. I have to figure this out. So this is 2020. I make the appointment, let's say it was March or April. I don't get the appointment until September. So, and it has gotten better, obviously, but it's still not great. I talked to many folk at the convention, and I live in California in the Bay Area, and the treatment's pretty good, but it's still really hard. I talked to some folks up in Canada, and it's darn near impossible to get an appointment with a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of the things I hear out there. So I consider myself very fortunate that I'm in an area where I could get care, even though it took me a while.
Even though you had to wait for it. And unfortunately, there's just not enough competent providers out there. Mm-hmm. And the wait list can be long, and it can be a hard journey. We heard that in kind of our earlier episodes when we were talking to Marlena, about her journey trying to get diagnosed. And, these psychiatrists, she'd schedule it and then they'd say, oh, we don't accept your insurance. And she's like, I've waited a month for this appointment,
That's just heart-wrenching when I hear that. Oh man.
Oh, it took years. I mean, in truth, it took years. for her to get to a diagnosis. I mean, it just, because life gets in the way. She had a job in LA. She works in production. So yeah, that would happen. And it's devastating like 2 or 3 times over, right? Because you get to the appointment, they say, we don't take your insurance. You're like, well, I have a job for 2 months. I can't do this again. So yeah, it would just drag.
So you started noticing this a lot. It sounds like when you had kids too, like, you had these job struggles, you had this other stuff, but you were kind of like making do and adjusting to those kind of things. But then having, children enter the picture, did that kind of throw things over the edge a little bit in terms of stress and managing life?
Yeah, I definitely think so, because especially, when it's not just you anymore, and, you can get a job and get fired and go find something else and not deal, it's not a big deal. You're like,
Right.
okay, I have a little bit saved up. It's always a big deal, but you can rebound when it's just you. But when other people count on you, when I look over and I see this at the time, infant kid, and it's at that time, my girlfriend before we got married, and she said to me one time, and I had, this was sometime around like 2020, right around then, in the pandemic, I had basically kind of had like a, sort of a coming of with a manager, sort of like a clashing of minds. They thought, I had been in sales for a long time, and I, knew how to do certain things with clients. And I thought I was really good at just taking care of my client. I had sort of a bashing of heads with this younger manager, and he wanted me to do things his way. And because I wasn't doing things his way, he thought that's why the sales weren't coming in. And it wasn't necessarily, that had probably very little to do with it, in full transparency. But we sort of had this clashing of the minds, and it was determined that I should probably leave this organization. And that is like right at the pandemic, like March of 2020. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, like, what am I going to do? And my girlfriend then at the time, she says to me, we need you to like figure this out. We need you to like figure this out. We need you to like, you got to get stability. You have to like no more.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay. And that was sort of that moment that.
Sorry to interrupt there, but what was like some of the relational difficulties in managing ADHD? Is like your ADHD and having the kids and managing all these tasks and things that are going on in your household. What were some of those things?
Yeah, so that's one of the issues there, is like staying on top of the bills, making sure that those are paid, making sure that, when you first have, and I don't know if either of you had children, but when you first have a child and you're doing things like, breastfeeding and then feeding and doing formula, staying on top of all that stuff, making sure the bottles are clean, and just all those little tasks kind of add up. And, that's where it just really comes to the forefront. And also, because I see this in a lot of the clients that I work with as well. And my wife watches this back. She's going to be mad at me, I'm sure. But a lot of times with women, because it's not diagnosed early, and, that they don't fit this sort of stereotypical mold of what an ADHD person kind of looks like, like people don't notice it. And so it's really when they do have a life event, like having a child, that's where sometimes those ADHD functions kind of come to, or symptoms come to the forefront. And, even like a small thing like, okay, well, I'll take care of cleaning these 5 bottles later. When you have a screaming kid and you're running around, or I'll go buy the diapers, I'll do that tomorrow.
Right.
And, you have a kid running around, like you just have to respond. You can't let those things kind of lapse.
Yeah. So as an individual, we can leave our room untidy, or we could forget about the dishes or forget something else. And it doesn't have the same type of gravity as when you have a kid who's like, I need to get fed right now, or we need to change the diaper, and you did not pick those diapers up at the store. What is wrong with you, kind of thing, right?
Totally.
It becomes an inflection point in the relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure our resident non-ADHD producer, David, who does have a child, is nodding vigorously right now.
Yeah, it's something that everyone struggles with, ADHD or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's just a huge challenge.
you call it dad brain, right? Mom brain. I mean, I don't have children myself, but I do have the luxury, truly the pleasure of being like godfather, father of science to like a number of best friends around the country. And I visit my little nieces and country when I can. And it comes for us all, you know, like if you take that parenting road, the mom brain, dad brain, parent brain, it's charming actually from the outside looking in. I'm sure that's not how it feels on the inside.
No. Yeah.
So you got your ADHD diagnosis, and when you got diagnosed, was it like an aha moment? Like, what was it like for you to go through this journey of living with some of these symptoms and then hitting this inflection point in your life, and then finally getting the diagnosis?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And the analogy that I like to use too with clients when you were saying just now, Aaron, is think of it like that movie theater popcorn machine. You go in there and it's just popping popcorn. And, you know, at a certain point, people could take it out, but at a certain point, it just overflows. And, you know, you can manage that. But if you can't, and so, you know, imagining like all these ideas kind of bubbling up like a popcorn machine in my head and just at some point just overflowing, you just can't control it anymore. And so that's where I sort of hit that inflection point. I get that diagnosis. And yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm like, no, you know, I knew I had this. Now it's just official. But where it goes is the real interesting part of it all was, okay, all right, here's your prescription. It was a stimulant. Here you go. And we'll see you in, you know, 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it was.
They just gave you the medication and just like,
good luck.
Go on your way.
I'm sitting there. It's like they tell you to take it like first thing in the morning. And I'm sitting there. I have the prescription. It's sitting on my nightstand and I'm looking at it. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to solve all my problems. I can finally turn my brain off. This is going to be great. And I started taking it and I hated it. And that's part of the thing.
What did you hate about it when you started taking it?
It made my brain more foggy than anything, to be honest with you.
And what dose? Just curious, what dose? Do you remember what dose they started you at?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And that's what I want to share with anybody here listening, because medication can be a very, very important part of ADHD. And just anything in general. Medication can be great for it. It's kind of like, I can't see the chalkboard in school. Well, why don't we try squinting for a year and then we'll try eyeglasses? No, it can give you that. It can give you that support that you need. So I definitely don't want to downplay it. What for me worked was I had a dosage. I had 10 milligrams of the extended release Adderall was what I started. And it really takes finding a psychiatrist that will partner with you.
Yeah.
And you can work together to figure out, okay, as opposed to just blindly again. And I don't blame that doctor that I first started working with, or in some cases there's a nurse practitioner, because they're overwhelmed, maybe overworked, not, you know, they're just responding to the masses. But when I finally found the right psychiatrist that would actually partner with me and we would have conversations and I would say, hey, I heard about this particular medication. What do you think? What have you heard from other clients? That was the big thing. But yeah, for me, it started with 10 milligrams of the extended release Adderall. And really, I'd like to say sort of like the grace of God, or just one of those like moments where this book called ADHD 2.0 showed up in my recommended feed on Audible.
By Dr. Ned Hallowell.
Correct. Yeah. And that's, you know, and there's a lot of books out there, but it really, for me, it was like the education part. Now it's like, try to understand more about this. That was the bigger part of my journey. And like, okay, let's look at all the things that we can try besides medication that could help us here.
Or along with, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah. Along with, go hand in hand. Absolutely.
And are you on medication now or no?
Yep. Correct. Yeah. I'm still, I still take one. It's a stimulant. It's not Adderall. For me, it's been smoother than what Adderall had been.
What stimulant, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, no problem. Vyvanse is what I've been taking.
Oh.
Yeah, for a lot of people, this is what I see with my clients too, is a lot of people have to go through this trial different medications before they find the right one, and it's different dosages too. And I want, it sounds like you went through that journey. I wonder, your name of your company, it has damn healthy dose, right? Like, or like, tell us about what is that? Does it have to do with
Correct.
medication?
Great segue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, damn healthy dose is kind of a play on ADHD, kind of similar to you guys with attention different. So many times we're told, like when I told one of my siblings that I had ADHD, they said, "Oh, that's not your problem. Your problem is you're always late. Your problem is this. Your problem is symptom, whatever. Insert ADHD symptom. That's your problem. You don't have ADHD. Like, that's not your problem." And even when I went through the coach training, I actually did 2 training programs. One was an ICF accredited program because I'm
International Coaching Federation. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And it was called the IACT, and they were great folks there too. But one of the exercises that we did in that training program was, what do you think about the initials ADHD? And every single person in the class was like, "Oh, I hate it. It doesn't really represent what we are. It doesn't tell you anything like what they should have different initials." And I thought to myself, no, you know what? That's what it is. Whatever. I'm going to turn that into a positive. So like, we're a damn healthy dose of spontaneity. We're a damn healthy dose of creativity.
Love it.
You know, whatever we are, all those things that we're told we're not, we have a damn healthy dose of something else. That is better.
That is so cool. And also, it did take me a minute. Did it take you a minute to hear the a damn healthy dose, ADHD? Because I was just like, DHD for a while.
Oh, yes.
So brilliant, really brilliant, right? Because you're like, no, a damn healthy dose. I'm going to keep those letters, but we're going to make them radically acceptable.
Yeah, and reframing it, kind of like what we're doing here at Attention Different, right? Reframing the condition. It's not that we are going to change the label. I mean, it's been around for however many years now, right? But you're reframing the condition in a more uplifting and empowering narrative.
Exactly. So my tag on Twitter or X and Instagram is just at damn healthy dose. So again, that's like the A.
Amazing.
Damn healthy dose. So that's sort of
got that damn healthy dose of creativity, Steve.
I know.
Yeah, it's really smart. I thought we were the wordsmiths, Aaron. I'm having my little, like, you know what I mean? I'm having my little like game respect game moment. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Steve.
No, I love what you guys do. And Aaron, when you and I kind of struck up a conversation there in November, that was one of the things. You're like, yeah, we're doing the same thing with attention different, like a different look on things. And I love that. I think one of the things that we're really good at as ADHDers is, one of my favorite quotes is, the obvious opinion's not always the most informed. So we're able to look beyond the obvious and see things, but sometimes we miss the obvious that's right in front of us too. But hey, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I like that.
I love that quote. I'm writing it down.
I also heard a little bit about your journey with getting into coaching. Tell me about what kind of stuff you do with clients. What's your expertise and population you work with, and tell us a little bit about your coaching practice.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that. So Damn Healthy Dose, we're a ADHD solutions is what I like to call it. I'm a coach, but I'm going to help you provide some ADHD solutions. And so I provide coaching, like one-to-one coaching. There's several different options that I have on my website. Feel free to check that out. Sorry if you guys don't mind a plug there.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I like to talk about with clients and sort of the clientele that I work with is, so two things. One is, so the clientele, like I view that someone like myself, is my perfect clientele. However, people like me are very reluctant to get help. I mean, you guys were at the ADHD convention. You've been in this community for a while. There's not a lot of men out there that are doing this. And just in general, because I think a lot of times we just think like, hey, we got this, we'll figure it out, no big deal. So someone like myself is my perfect clientele, someone who took a little time in life to get through, but now you're here. What can we do? Let's come up with some plans to kind of work forward. But yeah, I mean, I have coached Primarily, it's adults and it's people that have been in the workforce for a while. I have a vast experience working in tech and working in software areas, and there's a lot of folks in that, in just not even just the sales part of it, but in the developer community that are dealing with ADHD, and that's a lot of times I can have some strategies for. We talked about the SURF, the emotional regulation. Another piece of the puzzle is a modality called the steer map, which is, let's think of a situation that you're dealing with. Let's identify what's that thought that comes up. Okay, then name an emotion. So STE, E is the emotion. Name the emotion that you're feeling right now. A lot of times with us, it's like guilt, it's the shame, it's overwhelm, it's what have you. So identifying those emotions, which then drive our actions, which is the A part of the steer map, and then that leads you to the result that you're in. If you don't mind, I'll share a quick example of my
Please.
own thing there. One of the things that I do as well as managing, with medication, is I like to exercise. I like to do 30 minutes of exercise at least every day. That's what I like to do. You guys had on the last episode was ADHD and exercise. So it's like my inspiration here in the new year. So I'm doing 30 minutes every day. So this one particular Friday, I want to come out and do a bike ride. Well, I look at my bike and I have a flat tire on it. So that's my situation. Situation is I want to do a bike ride. I got a flat tire. My thought is now I got to drive 15 minutes across town to the REI to get a replacement tube. That's my thought. Obviously, it's a Friday afternoon. I'm frustrated. That's the emotion that's coming up for me. I'm frustrated because I got to drive over there. And I'm already thinking in my head, and this did happen, but I'm thinking in my head, like, I'm going to get to the REI. There's going to be someone in line who's buying camping gear for the weekend. It's a nice Friday afternoon. They're going to have all these questions. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I'm standing there for 30 minutes in line. But yeah, so I get to the REI. So that's my actions. My actions are I drove to the REI. I'm in there. And what do? I just pick up one replacement tube for my bike and I get in line. Because so much of what we do as ADHDers, we just take care of what's in front of us. Like we don't necessarily always think intentional. We just take care. Like, that's the problem. I got to solve it.
Right.
And so that's my thought. That's what my actions were. Now looking back on it, it would be like, okay, well, what could this is where I would ask as a coach, like, okay, well, what could you have done that you didn't do? All right, good question. So what I would have done is maybe examine the bike itself. Like, okay, is there something else going on here with the bike? I could have bought 2 replacement tubes, so then I don't have to go back if something happens.
Right.
Amazing, yeah. I could have brought the bike with me and had them fix it. But, again, by all means, am I going to let someone else fix my problem? I can do it all. I could have done that. I could have
trying to do it all yourself.
Yeah, there could have been a couple things I could have tweaked, but I didn't. So I purchased the tube, went back home, started pumping it up, and then I would get to a certain point, and there was a hole between the rim and the tire itself, and the plastic tube would go through and just pop. And so I'm pumping it up. It does that, and it pops. And I'm thinking, oh, man, now I got to drive back to the REI. So I'm beyond frustrated at this point because now I can't even get my ride in, and I had to go back the next day.
This is no longer exercise.
Yeah. So my result, so the R is the result line. So, okay. So I have my situation, my thought, the emotion that drove my actions led me to this result, which was I can't complete my ride. I got to go back tomorrow. So what's the result I want to get to? This is where we can start thinking intentional. The result I want to get to is I want to be able to use my bike. So, okay, well, what actions do I need to take to get there and kind of work my way backwards?
Love this.
And, that's sort of the things that I'll work with clients about. I use the bike example because it's an everyday, like I can apply this to everyday things that happen in my life.
If I may comment, actually, you're starting to knock on that like guru mentor status, which I give you as a nod, because first of all, I did not expect to go forwards and backwards through steer, and it works perfectly. I see how you go through it in this is what actually happened. And to your credit, it doesn't sound like on my first listen, that didn't sound wild. Like, yeah, the tire was popped. I went to REI. I got it. In fact, the first impulse I had was, this sounds like an upstanding individual who takes care of their life. like they found a popped tire and they went to REI. They got it fixed. But I'm that like mentor moment. That's like, no. You're missing the little nuances along the way that could have improved this even further. And that does feel very CBT-ish, right? And then you work backwards from R back to S through that new intentionality, that new thought process. I think that's very elegant, actually.
Our emotions can get in the way of our focus because we may be focused on the wrong thing. We may be focused on, I'm taking care of this anxiety. I'm taking care of this fear. I just need to ride my bike. I need to accomplish the goal. And I was talking to a client yesterday, and his wife was like talking about how he oftentimes jumps in impulsively and kind of picks battles with the kids, with these young kids, and his own children, right? And she is kind of seeing this from the outside, is like, honey, why are you picking the battles? You gotta, why aren't you picking your battles with these kids? Like, you're going in and being very rigid about what it is you want them to do, and like and telling them to have to do it this one way. And I think the ADHD mindset is sometimes we get fixated on, what is the thing that I need to have happen right now? Like for you, it was, I want to go on this ride. I need to make this happen right now.
Yeah.
You didn't see the forest from the trees. And with that client situation, she was like, do you have to fight with the kid right now about eating? Do I eat breakfast first or do I go and get changed? Like, the dad was like, you have to go get changed right now before you eat breakfast. And she's like, well, just give him breakfast. There's enough time. Like, give him breakfast. Like, don't pick this fight right now. He'll get changed afterwards.
Yeah.
But his ADHD brain was like, no, this is the way it has to be.
There's an order.
Yeah. He couldn't see the forest from the trees.
That blinders. Yeah. The emotional dysregulation throws up the blinders. And I can relate to all the things y'all are saying. It's just in an instant losing yourself in that dysregulation. If there's an order, no, it's got to be this. I got to do this or else I failed. Fear of failure.
Totally.
And our intentions with ADHD, I tell clients about this too. It's like our intentions, that is the precursor to our attention. So if we don't have strong intentions or a clear intention, we can find ourselves down all sorts of winding and meandering paths towards whatever it is.
Great quotes today. Intention is the precursor to attention.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I wrote that down too. That's fantastic, Aaron. Thank you.
I've been working with this guy for 12 years. I'm like, that's new.
But Aaron, to your point as well, with that example of your client, is that's where the self-compassion and grace kind of comes in. That I try to remind my clients. It's like, give yourself 8 hugs a day. Forget about, like, it's okay. Forgive yourself, because if you were walking down the street and you saw someone with a broken arm or they were on crutches, chances are you're going to hold the door for that person. Right. Most of us will. We'll see them like, oh, can I help you out? Can I do this? But because we can't see what we're dealing with up here, we don't give ourselves the grace. We just think, so your client's like, no, we have to do it this way. So it's like, that's where that grace and self-compassion kind of come in. And it is a fine line. You don't want to give yourself too much grace, but a lot of times we don't give ourselves any. At least I'll speak for myself.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. Like, we don't want to make it an excuse. Like, oh, I have ADHD, so therefore I can't do this thing. But at the same time, we have to be like, hey, yeah, this is a real challenge and real difficulty. I'm struggling with this thing, and it has something to do with my brain wiring. It has something to do with this ADHD. And how do I move forward with giving myself self-compassion in the moment?
Yeah. Wait, if we can keep this thread going a little bit, I have a top of mind question to that point. It's a shame we don't have, or it's a bummer we don't have crutches for our brain, right? Like that performative, that something that people see and they go, oh, this person needs care or assistance, right? To your point, I think it's absolutely on point. During the pandemic, there was an Instagram post from a couple in an ADHD thread, in the ADHD arena, that they had decided, because of all the lockdowns and being stuck together, to put little dials around their neck, kind of like I forget the rapper, but with the clocks. But if like they hang these little dials that had an emotion.
Flavor Flav.
Flavor Flav.
There we go.
Flavor Flav. So think Flavor Flav, but with an emotional dial. And these partners would shift the dial based on how they were feeling that day, or the emotional regulation or dysregulation going on, so that they didn't have to ask or probe or ping. It would just, they would wear it around the house, and it looked silly. It was pandemic lockdown times, but it struck me immediately as so effective. It was like, we don't have to have a conversation. I don't have to probe. It says right here: anxious, stressed, confident, ebullient, whatever. They had this little wheel that they would wear. And my question to you: you seem to be a person who has radically accepted your own AD. That couple during the pandemic, they seem to have radically accepted emotional dysregulation, a need for communication outside of words and for probing. Since you've radically accepted your condition, how does that inform your practice, your coaching? How do you carry that into your coaching? How do you try and transmute that or transfer that to your coaching client?
Yeah, I always remind them that I'm also suffering from ADHD too, and that's a really really good point that you brought up there, Stephen. Recently, I had not a client but just an associate who reached out to me and said that he was interested in getting into ADHD coaching, and he said, I'm interested in getting into this. But he's like, the more I think, like, yeah, I could be good at it, I think, wow, well, I don't have my own, and I don't know if it's okay to cuss on your program or not.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so he's like, I don't have my own shit together. So how can I coach other people? And my point to him was like, no, ADHD is and coaching is not about not having your shit together. It's about, how do I accept it and how do I manage that? And that's the key. It's like, yes, because we're like a boat with a hole that springs up over here, and we fix it, and then there's another one over here. Like, it's acceptance. It's accepting that I'm never gonna always have my shit together. I'm sure there's something going on in both of your lives. I mean, you guys look great.
Yeah.
Don't you dare look on the other side of this camera, Steve. Right behind here looks immaculate. We've got our pitch. I've got a fiddle leaf fig, my poster from the movie. Behind this camera,
Love it.
Nightmare.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, that's it. It's not necessarily about having your shit together. It's about, because that's the thing. And your producer, David, to give him a little shout out, one of the probing questions he had, and I was like, wow, I love this question. It's I am versus I have. And
I am versus I have ADHD.
Yes, correct. This is our central radical acceptance question. Go on, Steve.
Correct. So, like, I have a cut on my face from shaving this morning. My wife and daughter have a cold. Like, I have, whatever. Having is like acquiring things, but this is who I am. This is I've come to accept it. Trust me, it took me years to get around this, but I've come to accept, like, this is who I am. Like, this is my identity. This is the person I am. I can't necessarily change that. If I was born with that broken arm, I would have the crutch on there. So, like, this is, and I know there's also trauma that can also lead to this. You could spend years studying this, and I know there's a lot of things that can cause ADHD. But I can look back and I look at my link in life, and I look at my father, who's not here, but he went through his whole life and he was never diagnosed ADHD. Right. And, I look at my hereditary case that, okay, this is where I know that's how I got it. And I see I have two kids, and my older one, although we've never had her specifically tested, and that's a whole different can of worms, but I know I'm like 99% sure that she has ADHD, and also I'm also dealing with dyslexia, and she deals with that too.
These are just occur quite a bit,
yeah. These are just what we are. And my other thing is a sensory. I have a sensory processing thing. In my case, like, I was a kid, my ears would just turn red for no reason. And we never figured it out. And, it was my siblings used to pick on me and, like, would poke at my ears to see them turn red. And, but for me, and I still have that, like, I still am very sensitive. That's why I'm not wearing beautiful headphones like you guys. I think they're the
Oh,
AirPods.
that's so interesting. I mean, like like irritant, but also because I mistook it. Does it also happen maybe with emotional moments, like if you're
Yeah,
stressed or angry?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just, there's that whole saying that your ears are burning, so people must be talking about you. So maybe that's the case. Maybe lots of people are talking about me
Maybe
somewhere.
someone
I don't
like
know.
you is where we get that phrase from.
Could be.
Seriously, thinking about the etymology of that, like, hey, are your ears burning? Like, I feel like that's
Yeah.
a one-to-one. That's fascinating.
Coming around to your point, Stephen, it's like that acceptance of it, and just accepting that who I am and how can I manage that, and that's what I work with my clients on. It's like,
Dope.
let's accept this, what you're dealing with in life, and let's figure out ways to manage it.
That's
Perfect.
awesome. That's how
Yes.
Aaron and I. That's really how Aaron and I started this whole thing with each other. Is we saw it was a game respect game moment. We saw the anger and rage that we had was not unhinged chaotic fury. It was due to injustice. It was due to injustice. We felt that there was an unjust treatment of not only our neurological condition but the whole neurospicy community, right? And we found that a linchpin is really this idea of I am versus I have. And I'm so glad that you naturally brought it up. But I believe, and I think Aaron believes as well, that we are culturally inculcated. We are taught that it's something to have. It's to differentiate you, it's to box you and then treat. And the reclamation, to reclaim that and to say powerfully, hey, I was born this way, Lady Gaga, right? I was born this way. This is who I am. It's part of my brain wiring. It informs my personality. It informs my energy management. It informs my relationship building and maintenance. Like, it informs everything. If I fight that reality, I will surely suffer. I will surely suffer.
Totally.
If I accept that reality, we can dance with it. We can learn to dance.
Absolutely. And that it goes back to the damn healthy dose. Like, let's focus on what we're good at. Let's focus on what we're good at. Let's focus on that.
Yeah, I have a damn healthy dose of creativity. I have a damn healthy dose of ingenuity. I think that's a good place to kind of wrap this up. On this note of positive self-acceptance and how we look at the condition, not only in ourselves, how we think of ourselves as I'm someone, I'm an ADHDer and I have this unique, beautiful, and challenging brain wiring, but how we treat the condition and the community more broadly, and how we can support each other in all the neurodiverse spaces, folks with learning disabilities and folks with all sorts of challenging physical and mental, neurodiversity, and how we can support each other. And so that's, I think, what we're trying to do at Attention Different. It sounds like that's kind of, your mission as well, is to help people accept themselves, treat themselves more kindly. And we're really glad that you came here and are part of this community.
Guys, thank you so much. And, thank you for, first of all, inviting me to your event when you guys had just share for the audience a little inside baseball. Stephen and Aaron and their team put on great parties, and they had this great event. And I've been hearing about the ones from the previous ADHD convention.
Word got around.
In Baltimore last year, I heard some good things. So I just have to thank you guys, for accepting me. And the other thing that I really would like to see more of, more embracing from people, not just in the ADHD community, because that's the community we're in, but also, as a whole, is this sort of like scarcity versus abundance mindset.
Oh, yeah.
And I think so many of us get into that scarcity mindset. And I'm using the party, like, you guys could have been like, no, what he does is kind of like, if someone's working with Steve, then he's not going to work with us, so we don't want to have him there. And it's like, but you didn't. You were like, hey, come on in, and that's what I really admire about you guys, and just wanted to share that, and just want to thank you again.
Of course, it's not a competition.
No.
It's not a competitive space, really. And anyone that treats it that way, I think, is in it for the wrong reasons. We're here not to, take the chunk of the pie for ourselves. Like, what we want is to help people, help the most amount of people with this condition. And we need everybody. There's so many people who need help, and we're just glad that we seek out and we want to elevate voices in this community. So that's what Attention Different is all about too, is elevating voices of folks that really are in this for the right reasons and want to help people. And you're one of those folks. And we're so glad that
So grateful.
you're part of this community.
There are no heroes. There are no leads in this show. It's an ensemble cast, right? Yeah. So on this note, this is the pluggables part. You've got a book, you've got tags, you've got socials, you've got a website. Give us your pluggables. What do you want the peoples to know?
So my website's damnhealthydose.com. Follow me on Instagram or X. It's the same on both. It's at damnhealthydose. And yeah, I'm here to help you with your ADHD solutions, whether that's coaching. I have some other cool things kind of upcoming. A project I'm working on. I'm hoping this is my goal for 2025. It's a book called On Eagle Wings coming out. And I'm wearing a Philadelphia Eagles shirt behind me. The book is, it could be, you could look at it like, oh, it's just about sports, but actually it's not. It is about that, but it's also not about that. It's about, and we spoke earlier in this program about my father. It's about, I became a love of sports to have a conversation with my dad. And this is talking about those stories of that. And so I'm working on that. It'll be out in 2025. That's my promise to myself. So when it's out, I'll reach out to you guys again and we can talk about it then. But but look for that.
I'll have you back on for sure.
Yeah. Please do. Yeah, we're excited for that. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you, if you could give, let's give a very short, concise as possible. No, this can be sometimes challenging for ADHDers, but as concise as possible. Give our audience what would be the number one kind of takeaway that you would say has helped you or has helped your clients. What would be that thing that you would say, this is a great tool or takeaway for you guys to do?
I think it goes back to what we were just talking on a little bit before, which is that the acceptance. So the give yourself that grace, that self-compassion, just when you come around to accepting it. And it's not just that I am ADHD, it's accepting, the situation that you're in, like accepting, I use my bike example, but accepting that, I'm here, I'm 2,000 miles away. I have a loved one that is in the middle of the fires, and just accepting what you're dealing with. That's the big thing. I think that will be my one takeaway for people is just accepting where you are, and then how do we manage it?
Yes, I love that. Radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance is the answer. Steev, thank you so much for coming on the Attention Different podcast. It was not only a thrill, but actually incredibly insightful to have you here. That actually is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Shame on you, Stephen. You were so insightful. Thank you for coming. We expected this since we met you at our little get-together in Anaheim, and we cannot wait for the forthcoming book. And we will have you back on the show for sure when that comes out to talk to you about that journey and how things are going for you then.
Guys, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. I love what you're doing at Attention Different, so keep up the good work. And Stephen and Aaron, all the best. Thank you so much, guys.